Dr. Heidi Grant here with another episode of 3 Things to Do. Before we go any further, don't forget to hit that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, today's episode deals with something that, frankly, I think most of us deal with all the time, whether it's in our personal life or our professional one, and that's conflict. Often, when it comes to conflict is something that makes us all a bit anxious. And human beings, when they get anxious, tend to do one of 2 things. They either run away, right? We do flight. We try to get ourselves away from whatever is making us anxious. Or we turn it into a little bit of aggressiveness and we try to tackle things in an angry or frustrated way. And both of those turn out to be really bad strategies when it comes to dealing with everyday conflict with your partner, with your children, with your coworkers, with your boss. So today I'm going to give you 3 things to do to deal with conflict more effectively and to not rely so much on those impulses that sometimes lead us down the wrong path. The first strategy I want to share with you is to address it directly. Again, when we have a little bit of a conflict, a differing opinion with someone else, often we want to try to pretend like it's not happening, right? Avoid actually discussing it, but that's only going to make the problem worse. It's only going to make it fester, and people then start to engage in more passive-aggressive strategies with one another instead of actually taking the opportunity to discuss the conflict and address it in a proactive way. The second strategy for dealing with conflict is to consider the other person's perspective. And I realize, particularly when that conflict has made us angry, that's the last thing we want to do. But the truth is, there's real benefits for you in considering the perspective of the other person, where they're coming from in this conflict, because it's going to allow you to be better able to talk about the conflict with that person in a way that they can actually hear you. To acknowledge where they're coming from is going to be a good first step in actually getting to a place where the two of you can reach some consensus. The last strategy you need to use when dealing with conflict with another person is to own your part of it. And again, I know this is the last thing we usually want to do when we're good and angry at another person, is to acknowledge that maybe we may have played a part in that conflict as well. But once again, if you don't actually own your part of the conflict, acknowledge that perhaps there were things that you were doing that maybe may have ticked off the other person or created some difficulties for them, then you're very unlikely to ever really see eye to eye. In any conflict, both parties need to be really coming together, acknowledging their own point of view, acknowledging what's reasonable about the other person's point of view, and both taking steps in order to make things better in the future. So let's go through those 3 things to do to deal with conflict one more time. The first, address it directly. Honestly, conflict just doesn't go away on its own. We need to talk about these things head on in a way that can be productive. And in order for it to be productive, you need to use strategy 2. Consider their perspective. In any conflict, there's never a person who's entirely right and another person who's entirely wrong. It's important to actually understand how you both got to this place where this conflict exists so that you can resolve it effectively. And finally, own your part. None of us is perfect. Each of us is human. And in any conflict, there's usually going to be something you also could have done better. Starting this discussion around the conflict by owning your part of it is a great way to make sure the other person feels like you're being fair. That's going to make them more likely to be fair in return. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of 3 Things to Do. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And share this video with somebody you know who maybe sometimes has some difficulty dealing with conflict, or maybe someone with whom you have a little conflict right now and you'd like to get on the same page. See you next week.